I was taken to the depths of the sea by a hungry shark. My name is Jesse Albergast. At the age of 8, I went with my family to spend a day in Santa Rosa, Iceland, in Florida. My siblings and I were playing happily in the water when suddenly I felt intense pain in my right arm and legs. I looked down and saw a shark attacking me. From that moment on, I was dragged underwater. For a few seconds, I didn't know how to escape. Fortunately, my Uncle Vance quickly ran into the water to save me. He grabbed my arm, pulled it and brought me out of the water. But that was when he realized that the shark had ripped off my arm. The other arm wasn't a state of shock, but my uncle remained calm and decided to protect my family. Calmly, he grabbed the shark and brought it to the surface. Before it, the shark still had my arm in its mouth. A reminder of the act that saved my life that day. After pulling me out of the water, he took me to the beach, where rescuers intervene. He take me to the hospital. I suffered severe injuries to my legs, a brain injury and kidney damage. But thanks to the efforts of the doctors, I was able to recover my arm through several surgeries.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? Oh, Jesus!
The craziest thing you're not going to believe.
What happened?
So we got a call, somebody's concerned. Are you like a hairstylist?
No. I can make some chicken strips. Sorry, my breast like chicken strips.
I can't tell. You're
Okay.
So there's like hair hanging out of your thumb?
Oh my Jesus!
Someone's
Oh,
like...
that's my wig! Oh, hold on. Let's talk about wig. Hold on. Oh.
Oh. You gotta come see it though.
Oh my Jesus! I got.
You gotta see it though.
Oh Jesus!
This is actually terrifying to think about. In 2017, a man was heading to board his flight at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia when two women suddenly approached him. To the man's shock, they quickly rubbed an oily cloth on his face before apologizing and leaving. And although the man immediately wiped his face off and went to inform the nearby security guard, less than 20 minutes later, he was dead. That man was Kim Jong-nam, the older half-brother of the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Turns out, the woman had wiped his face with the nerve agent VX, one of the most deadly chemical weapons in the entire world. But when these two women were arrested and threatened with the death penalty for their actions, they quickly began protesting that it wasn't their fault. Apparently, someone had approached them and asked them to smear liquid on what they thought to be random people as a prank for a Japanese YouTube channel. And it was only after Kim Jong-nam's death that they realized they'd been tricked to take part in an extremely elaborate assassination. Luckily, in the end, the two women were both allowed to walk free. It's thought that Kim Jong-un had ordered the murder of his half-brother after the man had repeatedly criticized his family's insane control over North Korea, as well as Kim Jong-un himself. No one responsible for the crime was ever caught and punished.
Everyone living in Oregon should be aware of what's about to happen because it's really bad. On August 14th, which is less than 3 weeks away, this man will be released early from the Oregon State Correctional Institution in Salem, Oregon. His name is Kevin Mitchell Bumgarner, and he was arrested for raping his 4-year-old niece in 2003. I won't go into too much detail of what took place that day, although I will say that I just read the official document and it made me physically sick to my stomach. If you Google this case, you will find it, and it will tell you exactly what he did and how evil of a person Kevin is. Kevin was arrested after the incident and convicted of 2 counts of sexual abuse amongst other charges in 2004. But in 2020, he filed to change his name with the state while still incarcerated, and with the judge's signature, his legal name is now Kevin Mitchell Golden. So in a few weeks, not only will a sexual predator be released, he will be released under a completely new name. Kevin was originally sentenced to 61 years, but once released on the earliest possible release date, which is August 14th, he will have only served just under 19 years. 19 years for doing what he did to a helpless 4-year-old little girl. Now his niece is all grown up, but this is what she had to say about his upcoming release. She wants everyone to know that these monsters are not always just a stranger in a van. Sometimes they are people you trust. People in your own home. In terms of what we can do to possibly stop this man from being released early, my only guess is to contact the Oregon Board of Parole. Or you can contact the governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek, and plead with them to not release this man. If he did this once, then he's capable of doing it again, and we can't let that happen. Can't find any other pictures of him, so this is all we have to go off of. Please help if you can.
Breaking news, Lil Tay's manager now says he does not believe she is deceased. Earlier today, a family member who remains unnamed took to her social media account and made the announcement of her passing. Her manager has now called into question the legitimacy of the post. In addition, he says that cops both in Vancouver, Lil Tay's place of birth, Los Angeles, where she's been living with her mother, told the Daily Mail that they had no record of her or her brother's death. Speculation on her cause of death has begun circulating. One person claims to have witnessed the incident. The person said, quote, "As someone who was at the scene, I can confirm that both were together when passing. Due to a car collision, the brother was driving. Local officials are speculating, quote, texting and driving being the cause. The other vehicle occupants were okay with minor injuries." I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
All right, you guys. So Travion Taylor and Jessica Ross were a couple out of Riverdale, Georgia that was expecting their first child together. And on July 9th, around 10 a.m., Travion and Jessica went to Southern Regional Medical in Riverdale, Georgia when her water broke. So y'all, Jessica was in labor for about 10 hours, and a little bit after 8 p.m. is when she was fully dilated and it was time for her to push. So after pushing, her son was about to come out, but then he got stuck. So instead of stopping everything right there and doing an emergency C-section, the doctor then began to pull and tug on this baby excessively. So excessively that it caused the bones in the newborn's neck, skull, and face to break. Now, y'all, 3 hours later, so this is 3 hours after tugging and pulling on this baby, that's when the doctor goes ahead and decides to do a C-section. Now, while doing this C-section, when they actually pulled the baby out, the baby's feet and body came out, but the head was not attached. Now, the parents are oblivious to what's going on. The doctors then rush the baby out, but they won't let the parents see the baby or hold the baby. Now, the parents did later learn that the baby did die during birth, but they had no idea what took place, and they had no idea the trauma that the doctor had put the baby through. It wasn't until 3 days later that the parents actually learned what happened. So, allegedly, y'all, this hospital wouldn't even provide an autopsy or tell her how to get an autopsy. So, Jessica's lawyers are saying that the hospital even suggested that she get the baby cremated. Now, they do believe that the hospital was doing this because they didn't want to show the negligence on their part. Therefore, they wanted to get the baby cremated as soon as possible. Now, Jessica and the child's father, Travion, they're suing this hospital because they want to know why did this take place, and they want justice for their baby.
Lied to the couple about what happened, discouraged them from getting an autopsy, tried to encourage them to cremate the child, and failed to report the death to the medical examiner.
They also did not report the death to the authorities of Clayton County or the Clayton County medical examiner. This report was made by a funeral home, and after their funeral home waved the flag and alerted the authorities regarding this, it wasn't until then when Dr. St. Julian told the family what actually happened.
So the doctor who delivered the baby is Dr. Tracy St. Julian. So Tracy has been an obstetrician and a gynecologist in the Atlanta area since 2005. That would mean almost about 20 years. Tracy is also a certified robotic surgeon. Now, the hospital did reach out and they made a statement, and they're saying that she is not employed with the hospital, but I'm guessing because she was the gynecologist, whenever you go to the hospital to have a baby, the person who's supposed to deliver the baby comes up there and delivers the baby. Now, she has not made a statement. She has not came out and said anything about what took place. But this is a horrific story, you guys. Jessica had diabetes while she was pregnant. She was going to every appointment. She was doing everything right to make sure her pregnancy went smooth and her labor, only to have the negligence of the hospital and the doctor that helped deliver kill her baby. Now, she is suing. I'm going to keep you guys updated on this case, but comment below and let me know your thoughts on this.
On the morning of June 29, 2013, the vice president of loss prevention at the popular Toys R Us retail store in New York received a call from police. They told him that there'd been an incident at the Hamburg store, and they urgently needed his assistance. Bernie Grusa rushed to the store, and when he got there, police shared with him the heartbreaking news. The store manager, Larry Wells, had been fatally stabbed in his office during the early morning shift. He was on duty at 4 a.m. that morning, helping the night staff unpack stock, as well as prepare for the opening of the store that morning. There were only 4 other employees with him on duty that morning, yet none of them could tell the police who had murdered Larry. With no signs of forced entry or indication that anyone else had been there, police began to suspect that it may have been an inside job. They thought that the killer was most probably one of the 4 employees who had worked with Larry that morning, but their police intuition wasn't able to narrow down on a suspect. All 4 employees caught the attention of the police for various reasons, but there was no clear evidence pointing to the culprit. So in their quest to solve the case, the police turned to Bernie Grutza, the vice president of loss prevention, hoping that the store's CCTV footage could shed some light on what happened that morning. As the police meticulously examined the CCTV footage, frame by frame, they suddenly spotted something that would throw the case wide open. This is the shocking true crime story of Larry Wells. Larry Wells was born on September 22, 1977, in Dunkirk, New York. As a child, he was shy, quiet, and a bit reserved around others. It took him some time to open up, but once he did, his warm and helpful nature became evident to everyone around him, and he was definitely the kind of person you could always rely on. During his time in high school, he met his wife Jill, and right from the start they were inseparable. Even though they were only 15 years old when they started dating, they both knew that this relationship was so much more than just a high school fling. Their bond grew stronger over time, and they became each other's pillars of support. After completing high school, Larry and Jill attended the State University of New York State at Fredonia, where Larry graduated with a degree in elementary education and went on to earn a master's from Walden University, before landing a job as a substitute teacher at an elementary school. By the time 2006 rolled around, Larry had big aspirations for the future he was building with his wife. He had dreams of becoming financially stable, starting a family of his own, and even owning his own house. And even though he loved his work as a teacher, he became frustrated with not being able to find permanent work. Being in and out of a job at regular intervals meant that he couldn't sufficiently plan for the future, and that's how he ended up taking a job at Toys R Us. The job was only supposed to be a temporary solution while he searched for permanent employment in the education sector. However, fate had other plans for Larry. Despite initially viewing the job at Toys R Us as a stopgap measure, he quickly demonstrated his dedication and leadership skills, which quickly propelled him through the ranks, eventually becoming the store manager at the Hamburg branch. By 2013, Larry had been dedicatedly working at the store for nearly 6 years, and his life was finally shaping up just as he had always dreamed. His bond with his wife had grown stronger than ever, and the couple was overjoyed to have started their own family. In fact, Jill was pregnant with their second daughter, and they were eagerly looking forward to expanding their little family. Though retail work often demanded long and irregular hours, including weekends and holidays, Larry took it all in his stride, knowing that it came with the territory. So when Larry was requested to work on Saturday, June 29, 2013, he saw it as just another working day, never imagining the horrors which would unfold. Larry arrived at the store at 3:55 a.m. so that he could assist the night shift employees, Cindy and Isaac, with unpacking stock and preparing the store for opening. They had been tirelessly stocking shelves throughout the night, and Larry thought that they would appreciate the help. At 4:53 a.m., Larry received a radio call from Anthony, another employee at the store, who was scheduled to start his shift at 5 a.m. The store's doors were all locked, and only the manager had the authority to let him in. At this time, Larry and the 3 other employees, Cindy, Isaac, and Anthony, were the only ones in the store. Each of them working in different sections of the store, relying on their radios to communicate with one another. Just after 5 a.m., another store employee named Richard arrives at work. Just as Anthony had done a few moments earlier, Richard radios Larry to let him in. But strangely, Larry doesn't respond to the call. Richard tries to open the door, but as expected, he found it to be locked. Still unable to get hold of Larry, Richard walks around the perimeter of the store, and to his surprise, he finds that the door of the adjacent Babies R Us store is unlocked. Richard then enters through this door, punches in for his shift, and starts working. The employees all went about their job as usual, continuing their work in their respective aisles until 5:40 a.m., when Isaac became increasingly annoyed by a persistent beeping sound echoing through the store. Determined to put an end to the disturbance, he picks up his radio and calls his manager to ask that he switch off the alarm. Larry doesn't respond to the call, so after trying for a second time, Isaac assumes that Larry is probably on another call in his office, so he radios Cindy asking her to go check up on Larry and ask him to turn off the alarm. Cindy happily obliges and makes her way to Larry's office, and less than a minute later, a howling scream echoes through the store. The other employees, all sensing the dread in Cindy's voice, rush to their manager's office, only to find Larry slouched in his chair, bleeding from what appeared to be a gunshot wound, according to Cindy's initial observation. She immediately dialed 911, and within a couple of minutes help arrived. After checking Larry's pulse, they determined that although he was non-responsive, his heart was still beating. Acting quickly, paramedics placed him in an ambulance and raced him to the hospital. But tragically, Larry was pronounced dead upon arrival. The cause of his death was confirmed to be due to severe blood loss, and contrary to the initial belief of a gunshot, it was later determined that he had been stabbed 3 times in the chest. When police arrived at the scene, their first thought was that it had to be one of the 4 employees who was with Larry in the store, especially since there was no sign of forced entry. Cindy was the first person to draw the police's attention. She was the one who worked closest to Larry's office, and she was the one who had found him. Richard was also a prime suspect. He had arrived late for work that morning, and he was also the last person to enter the store. He also said that he entered through the Babies R Us store, which was different from the usual store protocol. Police also noticed that Isaac seemed to be nervous and evasive, while Anthony blatantly refused to cooperate or answer any questions. So with no clear leads and each suspect presenting their own potential reasons for suspicion, the police decided to turn their attention to the store's CCTV footage, hoping it could shed light on the events of that tragic morning. They immediately called Bernard Grusa, the vice president and regional manager for loss prevention, and within 20 minutes Bernard was there. He immediately assisted the police with any questions they had, and explained that he was the one who hired Larry for the manager role, and considered him not just an employee but a close friend as well. He then took the police to Larry's office, where they went to review the surveillance footage, and what they would find was nothing short of shocking. Over the course of the next 2 months, the police embarked on a process of collecting DNA samples from the dozens of store employees and eliminating them one by one, without any success in finding a match to the suspect's DNA. But as they approached the stage where nearly every single employee had been tested, they noticed that one notable name hadn't yet provided a sample. Bernard Grusa, the regional vice president for loss prevention, was a notable absentee from the DNA testing. He had been so helpful during the initial stages of the investigation, so they found it odd that he hadn't provided his DNA sample when so many others had willingly done so. Police immediately contacted him on his phone to try and schedule a meeting, but it seemed that setting up a face-to-face meeting with Bernard was proving all too difficult. He had apparently had a rough time dealing with Larry's death, so he took an extended leave of absence from work and even moved out of the house he shared with his wife. After approaching his wife for assistance, police quickly learned that Grusa didn't actually leave his house of his own accord, but that his wife had actually taken out a protection order against him and asked him to leave. They learned that only a few weeks before Larry was murdered, Grusa and his wife had an argument. The argument became so heated that Grusa pushed his wife out of the way before running upstairs to the master bedroom and closing the door behind him. A few moments later, his wife heard a gunshot, so when she raced upstairs to check up on her husband, she found Bernard laying face down on the floor. When his panicked wife rolled him over to check if he was okay, Grusa opened his eyes and said that he just wanted to check if she still loved him. It turns out that he fired the gun out of the window to make his wife believe that he shot himself. Police learned that Grusa was actually staying with his father, so they made their way to his dad's house unannounced, and here they found Bernard Grusa. He was a little bit shocked to see the police, but he cooperated with them and willingly provided his DNA sample. 2 months later, the results came back, and shockingly, his DNA was an exact match to the DNA found on the baseball cap and DVR machine in Larry's office. Bernard maintained his innocence, claiming that his DNA being on the DVR machine wasn't unusual, as he frequently visited Larry's office due to his role as the VP for loss prevention. He asserted that he had never seen the baseball cap before and had no idea how his DNA ended up on it. Bernard Grusa was arrested for the murder of Larry Wells, and during the police investigation, they uncovered a chilling motive for the murder. Despite being the regional vice president and receiving a salary of around $90,000, it seems that Bernard was drowning in debt. He had huge amounts of medical bills due to his wife being diagnosed with cancer, as well as the fact that he lived way beyond his means. He had accumulated debt of over $1 million and subsequently declared bankruptcy. Police also learned that Grusa had been stealing merchandise from various Toys R Us stores, only to sell the goods on eBay for a fraction of the costs. It was evident that he had been running this scheme for a couple of years, even continuing the scheme after Larry's murder. In July 2014, Bernard Grusa made a deal with the state, where he agreed to plead guilty to first-degree manslaughter, in exchange for him admitting to all of his crimes as well as forfeiting any appeals. Bernard Grusa admitted to the court that on the morning of June 29, 2013, he entered the Toys R Us store using his key. He said that he entered Larry's office with the intention of stealing money from the safe. He said that Larry walked in on him in the process of trying to open the safe, and that's when he panicked and stabbed Larry. He maintained that he never intended on killing anyone when he entered the store, but only acted out after Larry walked in on him. He also admitted to stealing over $200,000 of merchandise from the franchise, as well as over $19,000 in cash from the other branches he was responsible for. Bernard Grusa was sentenced to the maximum penalty of 25 years in prison.
My personal opinion is, if you plunge a knife into somebody's chest, or you plunge a knife into somebody's belly, that manifests an intent to kill somebody, okay? The appellate courts of this state have held that doing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8 times is not enough to evince an intent to kill.
Sedita says one of the strongest motivating factors in the decision to offer Grusa a plea deal was that Wells' family accepted it.
What's wrong with you? And what?
Talk to my daughter.
Parker?
Please,